And when we understand that, and when we have faith, and when we believe, and when we trust, then we're going to be in an abundant space. Always.
Today's guest has spent the last 2 decades establishing herself as one of Los Angeles' leading experts in real estate, business, and mindset. With the launch of Empowered Mindset, she is inspiring her clients to tap into their own personal genius and design lives and businesses that function in a state of flow. Please welcome my guest, Toni Patillo.
Well, I'd love to do a little bit of tune in before we get started. So if just follow me, we're going to inhale through the nose. We're going to hold the breath. I might say inhale some more. We'll continue to hold the breath, and then we're going to exhale, but we'll always inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose, okay? So here we go. Okay. Inhale deep. Hold the breath. Inhale a little more. And exhale. Inhale deep. Hold the breath. Inhale some more. And exhale. Inhale deep. Inhale some more. Hold the breath. And exhale. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Toni.
Hi, Juanita.
How are you, Miss Patillo?
I'm excellent. You know, I'm really great, and I'm super honored to be here with you. I love this Soul Hugger profile concept platform. I love it. So it warms my soul, and it's an honor to be here.
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm so thankful that you are here with us today. And I have to tell you as well that Soul Hugger was inspired a little bit by you. You don't know this, but the first time that I said Soul Hugger, I was writing a card to you. When we visited in Los Angeles, and I wrote in the card, "Thank you for such a soul-hugging time." And that was the first time that came to my mind.
Wow.
So you're a co-creator in that.
Oh, that is so
So I'm glad
beautiful.
you like it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And you know what?
Awesome.
Now that you mention it, when I think back to that card was so powerful, and it just moved me. It felt like the card was designed and made for me. And so when I read your message inside, it was so heartwarming. And yes, it was a soul-hugging experience that we had. And I'm so excited that we had that time together. It was kind of a spontaneous trip for you guys, but it was perfect.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yeah, it really was. So I want to get into all of your magical, mystical manifesting that you do and that you are. But first, I'd like for you to just give us a bit of your background, take us into your early childhood, and tell us about family life and how you became a career woman.
Wow. Well, that's going back. You know, I was born here in LA, and my parents had an opportunity to move us as a family to Washington State, a little town called Yakima, Washington. And my mom was a real estate broker, and she's also, you know, a singer. My dad was a singer. My sister was a singer. So my family came out of the entertainment world and the singing and the, you know, performance world. Except for I wasn't. in that world. I was just the kid coming along. I was the last of four of my siblings. I was the youngest, and I won't say I was an accident. No, I wasn't an accident, but clearly my parents were not planning to have another baby, and then here I came. Boom. They thought I was a tumor, actually, with my mom, and they just kept saying, well, we don't know what this is, but it's potential. It could be a tumor, right? Anyway, it turns out it was me.
Wow.
And I was born here in LA, and then we moved when I was 5 years old to Yakima, Washington. And we actually had a little house on 12 acres, 11 and a half acres, in a little town outside of Yakima that was called Selah, Washington. And that's where, I was registered, enrolled into elementary school. We noticed, or maybe I didn't notice because I was too young, but of course there were no other African American kids in this school. There was one other African American family that lived in the neighborhood where we were in Selah, but they were going to a different school, and they were a different age than I was. So I didn't have them in the same school environment that I was in. Make a long story short, it was a very racist community, and we had a lot of Ku Klux Klan that lived right around us. So some of the first experiences that we had was when I went to school. My first day of going to school, I was being bullied and made fun of because I was a little African American girl. I did not know at the time that I was an African American girl. I just was a little girl who, had my parents and my siblings, and we were moved to Washington. And, when I was growing up in LA, there were all different races, all different colors, and all different, types of people. And I never, ever registered it as being different ethnicities, right? It was just, we were just all people. So when we got to Washington and this experience happened in school, I was really taken aback, and I didn't understand why they were making fun of me, why they would be spitting spitwads at me, calling me names like little red nigger baby, just all kinds of horrible things. It was horrible. So of course I went home and complained to my parents that something was not right. These kids were laughing at me. They were making fun of me. And then my mother realized that she had to, kind of break down to me what this whole thing was. But the first thing that truly happened when we got to Yakima is that she went to go meet with the people. She had been offered a position as a real estate agent and broker with this firm that did a phone interview with her, but they never saw her. Back in those days, this was in the early 60s, they did not have, we did not have the internet. We did not have cameras on our phones. We didn't have any of that. Mm. So my mom got this position. We moved our family, everything, and sold our house in LA, bought this property in Washington, which was a dear friend of the family's. Who this woman was aging, and she actually had it's funny, she actually ran a brothel across the street from the Yakima Firing Center, which is where we lived. And again, this is this little town, Selah. Well, when my mom arrived, and when all of us arrived, and she went to go check in for her new position, suddenly the position was no longer available and no longer in existence. It was like, no. That's after they saw that she was an African American woman, and then suddenly they were just like, no, not happening here. So my mom, she and I went to Seattle to see about finding some other work for her there, which Seattle is about 140 miles east of, or actually Yakima is 140 miles east of Seattle, Washington. So we went to Seattle to pursue, opportunities for her there. And nothing presented itself. So we went back to Yakima, and my mom got very, very deeply involved in the civil rights movement. And she started meeting with people nationally about her experience. There was a guy by the name of Justice William O. Douglas who heard about my mom's story, and he was quite a politician there in the area. So he ended up writing a book, and he included my mother's story in that book about how we had relocated. And anyway, my parents became quite involved with the civil rights movement, and that's what I grew up in. So my family identified all of the defaults or defects in the system, with the school system. And of course, my mom was a teacher as well, and she took it upon herself. I would say my parents took it upon themselves to really start studying what was happening there with the community. And it was apparent that the history, there was not much Black history. There was not much history about the root of where African Americans came from, meaning the continent of Africa. So she just really dug deep and started to really study our culture and study the defects of what was happening, nationally, and that was the beginning of the journey. And my parents were very influential with empowering the community and really taking those kids and teaching them their history and letting them know how much they had to offer and that anything was possible. And it just, we just embraced the whole family. Now, and when I say the whole family, I'm talking about the community. So my dad was a director of theater, and also, like I said, they were involved with entertainment. So we created a school, and we created a cultural center. We built it on the 12 and a half acres that we owned. And it was a 20,000 square foot building that was 2 levels. Downstairs there was a boutique, there was a stage for performance, there was a kitchen, there was a big the boutique shop there, and just of course tons of bathrooms. And then upstairs was for classes and various different types of activities. So this would be the new life that we stepped into when we moved out to the Pacific Northwest. And it was quite interesting. My mother traveled the world with a lot of other civil rights activists. And, we just learned a lot. And I didn't realize until I became an adult that how much of an impact this would have on my life today. And this is where my mom didn't bring me up in a religious environment. My parents were involved in the church. All of their siblings were involved in the church. My brother and sisters were, involved in the church, as my family was. But once the civil rights movement kicked in and my mom started really studying what was happening inside of certain congregations, there was a bit of hypocrisy that she was seeing, and it was a complete turnoff for her. So she, at that point, like I say, I was 11 years younger than my next sister, 16 years younger than my next sister, older sister, and 17 years younger than my brother, our one and only brother. And so I grew up as an only child almost, because all of my siblings were pretty much gone and married with children. So it was an interesting journey. It was a real interesting journey. I didn't really get to. Well, my mom held me back from public schools because of the experience that I had when I entered into elementary school. So she home taught me until I was would have been in normal high school. I ended up going back to public school in my 12th grade. So I did not attend public schools from the age of 6 to 15. I graduated when I was really early, really young.
Oh, really?
So, it was quite an experience, but I graduated from high school in Yakima. Then I started going to junior college in Yakima. Happened to be the same school that my mom was also teaching at. So I went to junior, but I was going to junior college at the same time I was in my last year. So it's like was going to high school and junior college at the same time. And I finished high school, and then I moved to Seattle. I moved to Seattle, and that's where I signed up for University of Washington. So I completed school there. I was working there. I worked for a bank, Rainier Bank, I'll never forget, as a teller. Then I went to work for a law firm, and this law firm, they were lobbyists actually. Went to work for Garvey, Schubert, Adams, and Bear. This is before computers, so I was working with a bookkeeper, and we would do the books for the firm, and it was all manual. Everything was manually done. So it was pretty awesome. It was a pretty cool experience. But eventually, now my sister moved to Yakima with us, but she left shortly after because she was already in her last year in high school. And she was recruited by Pearl Bailey, the vocalist, Pearl Bailey. I don't know if you would know her. You might be too young to remember Pearl Bailey, but if you were to Google her, you'd see. She's a very famous vocalist, jazz vocalist. She came in and recruited my sister to go on the road with her and be a backup singer. So she went off and did her thing, and then I was there in Yakima and up through the end of high school with my parents. And then I moved to Seattle, Washington, and started college, and I finished college there. And then my sister wanted me to come back to LA with her and help her manage her singing career. And so I did. I moved back to LA. I was super happy to get out of the Pacific Northwest. You know, the crazy thing about Seattle is that it's a beautiful city, but it was always gray. You know, it was always doom and gloom because of the weather and a lot of rain. I mean, we could count the days on one hand that we would see the sun in the summer and the warmth.
Yeah.
So that was an experience. So I ended up coming back to LA. I was a young adult. I worked with my sister on getting her career really going. She was going to break away from being a backup artist, and she and her best friend Gloria ended up starting their own group, and I ended up managing them. So that was an experience. That was fun, but I wasn't making a lot of money with managing them. It was kind of you know how entertainment managers, you're getting like 10% of whatever it is they're generating, and they weren't generating a whole lot, so it wasn't like a whole lot of income that I was able to generate with them. But it was fun, and I learned a lot. And then I ended up getting a temp position with Universal City, and I was working. I can't remember what department I was working in, but anyway, it was a temp position. And while I was at that position is when I got an offer from Dick Clark. That was my first big job. And so I went to work for Dick Clark. That was fun. That was an amazing
What were you doing with him?
You know, I was managing his assets. Like, he had a lot of different accounts, right? But none of them were invested. They were just sitting in the bank. And so we needed to like convert all of those accounts over to real income generating vehicles. And so, you know, I was working in finance, and I was very instrumental in making that shift to investments. And then we went through the process of taking him public and making him public. So Dick Clark Productions at one point was a publicly traded company. They did pretty good, you know, considering. And after being with Dick Clark, like I say, I worked primarily in finance and administration. And then I got an offer. I got contacted by a gentleman who contacted me to offered me a position with Motown Productions. And at first I was not so sure I wanted to make a move to Motown. I wasn't real excited about Motown. That's a whole nother story. That's a different interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was, you know, there's always another side to the stories, right? So
that's so true.
I was not, you know, like, oh my God, you know, I literally turned the position down 3 times. And then finally they asked me if I would meet. They wanted me to come and work with Suzanne DePass. Suzanne DePass was a young producer who actually discovered the Jackson Five and introduced them to Berry Gordy. And from there, the rest is history. The Jacksons were really successful. And then Michael broke away and did his own thing. And so Suzanne was very instrumental in talent development, as well as producing movies and miniseries and special cable shows. I came to Suzanne. I ended up taking the position. She and I met. We clicked. She said, "Just come on and just let's roll. We don't even know what we're going to call it. Let's just do it." And so I went back to Dick Clark, and I actually shared with him that I have this opportunity with Suzanne DePass and Motown. And he said, I'll be honest with you. He said, we don't have any women executives here. We don't have any people of color in leadership here. He's referring to his own company. He said, but, if you really want to get a shot at growing in this industry, there's no better person than that would empower you than Suzanne DePass. And I said,
Wow.
okay. And he said, if it doesn't work out, you can always come back and still work here with us. So I said, this was an opportunity, and it turned out to be an opportunity of a lifetime. So I went to work with Suzanne, and I was with them for 15 years. So 5 with Dick Clark, 15 with the entertainment, with DePass Entertainment and Suzanne DePass and Berry Gordy. And that was just it was a real journey, a real blessing, a real exciting time of my life. And I learned a lot. So at the end of those, I will say the 20 years in entertainment, it just so happened I bought my first home when I was in the entertainment business. And the lady who represented me as my realtor, she stayed close to me, and I say this for any other realtors who might be listening. It's so important to stay close to your people, your clients. It's not just a one-time transaction hit and then you're off and next. It's really not that at all. These are major relationships that we develop with people who are making some of the most important decisions in their life. So you become friends, and you become long-standing friends, and it just becomes a bigger, more profound relationship. So needless to say, she represented me on the acquisition of my first home, and then when I was ready to sell, she represented me in that regard. She also stayed close as a friend, so she knew what was going on with me in the entertainment business. And she kept saying to me, you really need to come and work with me. You need to get your license, and you need to come and roll with me. And at that time, it was Prudential John Arrow in Beverly Hills, a boutique luxury, brokerage. And I thought, I don't know about a realtor. I'm not feeling the realtor thing. I just wasn't excited about it. But she kept insisting that this would be a great avenue for me because of my expertise and my experience in the entertainment business as a negotiator. I had great relationships, had a huge Rolodex. She said, I promise you will do amazing. And I decided to just go ahead and give it a shot. Things were shifting with me at the entertainment business. I had invested into a health and wellness spa, and it was really a weight management environment using the technology of now it's gone out of my brain, but it's anyway, I'll think.
Is it cryotherapy?
Electrotherapy. It's electrotherapy.
Electrotherapy.
And you would put these, things on your body, and it would help to break down your cellulite, and it would help to break down fat and help you to lose inches in tone. That's really what it was all about, losing inches in tone.
Yeah, I remember those things.
Yeah, yeah.
I think my mom just tried to give me one.
Oh, really?
Like a little at-home set. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, this is one where you would come into my spa and you would lose weight while relaxing, is what we used to use as a tagline. So it was Madame at
Yeah.
Monsieur. I started it. It was great. But my boss in the entertainment business, she wasn't so excited. First, she was really excited, and she was happy, and she even thought about maybe getting one herself. But then things changed, and she wasn't so excited about it. And you know, things happen in life. We go through changes, and we have to embrace change, right? At the time, it felt awkward and it felt different, but I knew that I had actually gotten my entrepreneurial skill set through my previous bosses. So Dick Clark, Barry Gordy, Suzanne DePass, these were the entrepreneurs that basically set the tone for my future. And I didn't know anything else. I didn't know anything else but being an entrepreneur. And so that blood that was in my DNA, just by virtue of, and what I did with Motown is I was literally running that division, Motown Productions. I was responsible for the human resource aspect, the business affairs, and our production division. We did management of artists as well. So we had a management company and a production company, and I was sort of the ringleader that kind of kept all those moving parts happening. And so, yeah,
Wow.
my realtor convinced me to get my license, and that was the transition into the real estate. So I went from intellectual properties to real property.
That's true.
Yeah.
And did it feel any different? Do you remember how it felt when you moved and you shifted into real estate? Did you feel well prepared just because of your experience and your
No,
background?
I wasn't well prepared. I was, you know, I was a little curious as to how it was going to evolve, but I wasn't excited about real estate as a realtor. I love real
Right.
estate, the physical, the structures, the building, my home. I love that.
Hmm.
But as far as working as a realtor, as a salesperson, I wasn't so excited about that. But I went through the motions and I followed the instructions and I did what I was told. And I had a mentor and I had a mentor for several years that helped to keep me on point, kept me accountable. Um, and soon as I started to kind of get my confidence up, because I was good with negotiating, I was really good with people. Um, I just didn't like the door knocking and the cold calling and that aspect of it. So I
Hmm.
learned over the years that my expertise is really with connecting with people and
Right.
developing that relationship to where they were comfortable, I'm comfortable, and we can just be, and it not be so robotic and structured, right?
Right.
Everybody's different. Everybody, how they process, how they sell, how they connect with people. Everybody has different characteristics, different personalities, different energy. So it really is
Mm.
just, you got to find your own space. You got to find your own groove. You got to find your own gifts. And when you discover those gifts, then that's when the magic starts happening. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Do you remember learning about manifesting and mysticism and being in the flow?
You know, I would say there's segments of awareness and becoming aware of what, it's really interesting that you asked that because back in the day when I first got in entertainment, I just was in it and I was just, And I knew what I loved was that I loved empowering people. I loved
Mm.
giving information, sharing information. I was always intrigued with personal development. I was always intrigued
Me
with
too.
um, mindset stuff. You know, I, I
Yeah.
really tapped into. It was a friend, a dear friend, who's a very still close friend and client, and now tenant of mine, who, you know, he introduced me to metaphysics, and that whole world was just so intriguing to me, and it made sense because I could see and feel the aspects of metaphysics, and so that caused me to want to dig deeper and know more and learn more. And so I was always engaged in metaphysics. I've been always engaged, and like I said, my mother and my father, they didn't raise me in the church, so I wasn't raised going to Bible study and doing these things. But deep down in my soul, I knew there was something greater. There was something that was really behind all of this that we're experiencing here on this planet. And I just continue to, you know, they say when the student is ready, the teacher appears, right? So through
Right.
these years, I've had multiple teachers to appear to expose me to various types of things. And it wasn't literally until about 2 years ago that I got exposed to an assessment which really nailed it. And it really identified. I did this assessment. It takes no more than 15, 20 minutes. And out of that assessment comes a report that really defines what your profile is and where your genius is. And prior to that, I'd never even imagined that I was a genius. I never would have ever considered myself a genius. I worked with a lot of geniuses, you know, with Motown. I worked with a lot of the artists that we often referred to as geniuses. And, you know, in the entertainment business, there were people that we would encounter that we would refer to as geniuses. Oh, Prince, he's a genius. Michael Jackson, he's a genius, right? All of these different people that I considered genius, but I never imagined or referred to myself as being a genius, right? But when I did this assessment and the report came back, and I thought, wow, it was describing me down to the wire. And I then realized there's a sense of freedom because there were certain things that I was experiencing throughout my journey that I thought were negatives, right? Things that I felt like I was weak on certain things and not so great with being able to maintain certain things. And all these years, I'm thinking it's a weakness that I have to work on. It's a weakness that I have to work on getting better and getting stronger at, right? But as it turns
Mm.
out, that is completely the opposite. And instead of me focusing on those weaknesses, I need to just focus on my strengths and my passions. And the moment I really tuned into that, there was a huge breakthrough. And many things have shifted since I tapped into that, literally with over the last couple of years. And I had the, you know, in real estate, as you may or yeah, you know that I was the broker of record for Keller Williams for many years. Like literally, I was with them for 13 years, and 11 of those 13 years, I was the broker of record, responsible for the oversight of all of these agents, right? Well, I'm really great with leadership. I'm really great as motivator and an inspirer, but I'm not so great with managing people, like literally managing the day to day. Well, that's what I did for
Mm.
11 years with all these agents, and I did great, but it wasn't my sweet spot. In other words, it wasn't my genius, it wasn't my passion. And it's close to it, but it was just off to a point where After a certain point, when you're not following your genius, you're not in flow. When you're not in flow, you ultimately begin to feel the difference because you're not, you have a little bit of irritability, there's a little bit of lack of confidence, something just doesn't feel well. So when you think about flow, and I believe you had a little excerpt on the tips on how to stay in flow. And the flow is key because, flow is defined in the dictionary as being fluid, right? And it just flows like a stream or a current. It just flows. Well, when you are in personal flow, your confidence is heightened, your ability to produce and perform is enhanced, your productivity is enhanced, your just overall happiness is enhanced. So the key is with any of us is that we got to get in our flow, and we got to know how to stay in flow. So much of that is really getting clear about who you are, what is your purpose, and why are you here. We don't get into the how business because the how business is not up to us. How is that's happening. That's their universe is organizing the how. So when you get out of that way, and you'd be surprised how many people get really stuck and full of anxiety because they're trying to figure out how are we going to do this.
I want to know, what is your advice on helping people to discover who they really are and their purpose in life?
Yeah, it's really, there's a process of really tapping into your real self, your true self, and who you are. And it starts in a couple of different ways. I mean, I can only express what I've done over the years to kind of get closer and closer to who I am and what my purpose is and what my passions are. And that is, it started with meditation. I learned to meditate. I had a formal instructor that George Quant was his name, and he and Deepak Chopra were very close. They had a business together for many years, and he formally taught me how to meditate. And then he introduced me to Deepak Chopra, who had another form of meditation that he also worked with. So between the two of them, I learned to meditate. I started practicing twice a day, and that in and of itself started to really connect me with Source, with the universe, with universal laws, with just understanding how things flow, and really starting to question myself as far as, why are you here? What is your purpose for being here? You were brought into this space, and of course I was really, really connected with my parents, and I knew that this is not an accident, all of this stuff that's going on. There's a reason for this, and there's a purpose. And so I would encourage you to, number one, start with some form of meditation, and just really, and make it a consistent practice where you're doing it on the regular basis. A lot of times some people would say that it's a bit challenging because they're not used to sitting still or being still. And a lot of people have this illusion that meditation is just calming your mind so that you're not thinking, or you're just being like blank, right? But that's furthest from the truth. When you're meditating, there can be a whole lot of things going on around you, and it's okay. You just have to be in the space with whatever's happening around you. But I would say the first way to start really getting in tune with who you are and what your purpose is really to start with a form of meditation. There's primordial sound meditation, there's transcendental meditation. There's all kinds of meditations that you can work with. There's breath work is meditation, you know. Once you do that, then you start to really dig into what is it that excites you? What is it that you just love to do? What is it that you love to do so much that you wouldn't even care if you got paid for it? You know, a lot of times people feel like what they have passion for, they can't monetize. But that's farthest from the truth, you know.
Yeah.
If you get super clear about what it is you love the most, what is it that turns you on, then you got to do that. You got to do it. Do what you love to do.
That's beautiful. And it's, it's so honest and so simple. Do you have any tips on how to get into the manifesting mindset?
Well, sure. The best tips for getting into a manifesting mindset is really understanding that we are creators. We, as human beings, we are each and every one of us is a creator. We co-create. What's important is to get clarity about what you want to create, what you want to manifest. Create, manifest, same thing, right? So what is it that you want to create? What is it that you want to manifest? If you don't have clarity about that, you'll never be able to manifest it. So the first thing you need to do is get super clear about what you want. And I remember the times where I would be in a workshop or a seminar, and they'd take us through these various exercises, and they'd say, okay, we're going to give you 5 minutes, and we want you to write down, your deepest desire, your what it is you want to see. Where do you want to see yourself in 1 year? Whatever the exercise was. And we'd get to that point, and it's like, we'd be stuck. Like, I don't know what I want. Wow, you don't know what you want. So it's like, you really have to think about that. Because we have a tendency to be in a space of, things are okay. What I really want is, I'm not sure if it's possible. I mean, so what you speak, you create. What you think, you create. So if there's something that you want to manifest, number one, you've got to start thinking about it. Secondly, I would say you need to journal on it. You need to write it down. You need to get very specific. And the more you write it down, the more that messaging goes into the universe and requests direction and or guidance and or support. So manifesting what it is, how do you get into that mindset? You just start thinking about what you want, and then you start speaking it. Then you write it, you think it, you write it, you speak it. You just start imagining. That's the other big thing, is visualizing. When you visualize as it already being done, you're putting it into the mix. You're putting it into the mix, and it's on its way to happening. And when you become like, I have a few dear friends who are major manifestors, and it's a process, but it's an easy process. It's not that complicated. What makes it complicated is our own head space, because we have a tendency to doubt. We doubt that it's possible, or we doubt that we can do it. We see other people doing it. We go, they're really good at doing that, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I haven't been able to master that yet, right? But the truth is, we can each and every one of us has the ability to manifest whatever it is we want. The only thing you got to do is be clear about what you want, and then you have to ask for help.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I tell people all the time, we're always manifesting. You're just not manifesting the things that you love,
Right?
Because you're not thinking and feeling those things, right?
Yes.
You're focused on all the things that you don't want.
Yes.
So we're always manifesting.
There's a word that you used just now that I want to emphasize, and that is feeling. When you tap into your feelings, that's emotions, right? And you really have to turn up that that switch, because when you manifest those feelings, in other words, you imagine how you're going to feel once you have achieved or arrived at a certain destination, right? You've got to really ignite those feelings. That will help to really magnetize that as well. Yeah, so feeling is important.
Absolutely. You are so right.
Yeah, feeling.
Yes. I mean, we've been taught to worship the brain and worship, and not that our feelings don't come from the brain, right?
Right.
But to be cerebral in everything, and intelligence is so highly worshipped that we have become so out of touch with our feelings. And our feelings are so powerful. They really just create so much so quickly.
Yeah.
And I believe we can't do it without. If we could think our way into things, then we'd all be fantastic, right? It's kind of like when people sit and think about what God is, or, what the creator is. To me, you can't think about that. It is something that you experience.
Yeah.
100%. So,
100%.
I mean, thoughts are important, but thoughts are important because they guide our feelings as well.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So, my question that I'd love to hear your answer to, because, I see you and I see all the things that you've been able to accomplish, especially in eras that, decades that were pretty tough as a woman and as a woman of color. And I think that there is this golden thread in your life that has always reaped abundance and opportunity. And I love that about you, because I want people to know how important it is to embrace abundance and to use that to magnify who you are and to put more good into the world. So can you give us some tips on, or give us why you think you've been so blessed in this way? And is there anything that you feel that you've done differently, or that you are doing consciously to allow this to happen?
Sure. The first thing I would say is that we are born to be abundant. This is not something that is designated for certain people or certain cultures or no. We are born to be abundant, period. I'm going to say this, and I just want it, I'm going to kind of say this, but I want everybody to understand. When you say that you believe or that you have faith or that you trust, I believe in God, I believe in Allah, whatever it is, really, really be clear that that faith, that belief, that trust is all you need for you to be in an abundant space. That's all you need is those things, because a lot of people will say that they trust, but then when they get in a little bit of a stench, then all of their trust goes out of the window, all of their faith goes out of the window, and it's like, oh my God, why is this happening to me? Well, you have to believe, and you have to know. And there is a point, and I know because I experienced it, there's a point where you have to understand and know that everything happens for a reason. And everything is, we're provided for. It all works out. But it's not going to work out if you don't believe it. If you don't have complete faith that this is all in divine order. We are we are born to be abundant, and we will experience abundance as long as we master faith and master connectivity. Mastering connectivity is going to give you all of the abundance that you need. And keep in mind that abundance is not necessarily cash. It's not necessarily monetary. Abundance is a lifestyle. Abundance is it's a way of being as well. So, mastering abundance, we were born to be abundant. We just have to tap into it and trust, believe, have faith, and then we have to let go. We can't set ourselves up. We can't set expectations for what's the 7 spiritual laws of success. There's the
I
law
love
of
that
detachment. I think it's the 6th law, the law of detachment. We have to detach ourselves from the outcome. Otherwise, we set ourselves up for disappointment when we get all attached to the outcome of how we think it's supposed to show up, or how we think we want it to manifest. But at the end of the day, we're not running it. That's the biggest secret. That's the biggest secret.
That is the biggest secret.
We're not running it. We're just not running it.
That's right.
And when we understand that, and when we have faith, and when we believe, and when we trust, then we're going to be in an abundant space. Always. Because there's nothing to worry about.
If you like our content, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It helps us bring so much information, knowledge, and wisdom to the world. Thank you so much for joining us at Soul Hugger.